Baklava is one of the most popular desserts in Greece and in the Middle East, and it's simply a layering of phyllo pastry with a buttery, nutty filling, and then it's soaked in this delicious honey syrup. I don't really know what to say, it's just so good. The recipe I'm showing you today is a Greek baklava, meaning that the filling is going to be made with walnuts. So we're going to start by finely chopping this. Of course, you could do it with a knife, but we've got a whole pound here. So I find it's faster in the food processor. And I like mine kind of really finely chopped in the baklava because I just think it all kind of melds together a little easier. To our chopped nuts, you're going to stir in about a teaspoon of cinnamon. So far, so good, right? Next, you're gonna wanna melt some butter over the stove, just plain old butter. Then we're gonna take a little of that butter and butter a 9x13 dish. This is a great dessert just to feed a crowd because a little bit goes a long way, and this one pan is gonna make lots of pieces. Also, it's a great dessert because it can be made ahead of time. It's actually better the next day than the same day, and it lasts, for up to a couple weeks. And now for probably the most intimidating part of this recipe is working with the phyllo dough, but y'all, it's not that hard. And it's not that finicky. I mean, you do have to be a little delicate, which sometimes I have a hard time with. You'll usually find this phyllo pastry in the freezer section at your grocery store, and the best way to thaw it is in the fridge overnight. So if you think about this a day or two before you make it, go ahead and pull it from the freezer to the fridge. But this is a super thin pastry, and so it dries out really quickly. So the main thing to remember, you're gonna keep it in its package until the very last minute. And then as we work, we're gonna keep it covered with a damp towel in between layering. First, we're gonna get a layer of pastry down before we start our filling. So you're gonna place 2 layers down of the phyllo pastry, butter, 2 more pieces, butter, 2 more pieces, butter, because we need 8 sheets to start. I love these sheets because they fit perfectly into a 9x13. 2 sheets, cover up, and brush with butter. A good tip, because I think, what people are worried about is when you brush sometimes with the butter, you tear the pastry if you're not being gentle enough. A great tip, and this just kind of speeds the process along also, is you could put some melted butter in a spray bottle and then just kind of spritz each layer. That would make this super fast. Repeat this process until there are 8 sheets down, and then we'll start filling. Really the only way I like phyllo dough is when it is soaked in butter. Otherwise it just kind of tastes like you're eating paper. All right, once we have our 8 sheets down, we're gonna go in with a few tablespoons of our walnut mixture. And basically you're just doing a really thin layer, and then we're just going to do 2 sheets of the phyllo dough, butter, another thin layer of nuts all the way up. So you're just getting a bunch of really delicate thin layers of pastry and nuts. And then we just layer, turn on some music, get a cocktail, layer away, enjoy the day. There's gonna be plenty of sweetness in the syrup that we pour over at the end, but I know some people like it extra sweet, and you can sprinkle a little sugar in with your nut mixture. Your top layer should have about 6 sheets of phyllo on top. And then I'll try to keep the top layer as smooth as possible. All right, our baklava is just about ready for the oven, but first we have to score it. It's usually served with those beautiful little diamond shapes, and while that looks complicated to do, it's really not. We're gonna start by first cutting this in half lengthwise, and you wanna be sure that your knife goes all the way to the bottom because this is gonna be really sticky when it's all said and done. So you wanna go ahead and have them in the individual shapes so that you can just pull them out one by one. We're gonna first cut it in half and then cut those halves in half, and then we're gonna run our knife in an opposite direction diagonally all the way across the pan. The butter kind of gets a little more solid as it sits here and cools while we work on it. So I find keeping a little bowl of water just to kind of keep your hands a little damp keeps these little sheets from sticking to your fingers. And it does not have to be perfect, okay? Remember, we like a little imperfection, makes it look more rustic. And that's it. This is gonna bake at 350 degrees for about 50 minutes until it's all golden brown and absolutely delicious. And while that happens, we're gonna make the syrup, because as soon as it comes out of the oven, we wanna pour that syrup right over the top. For the syrup that goes over the top, it is super simple. We're making sort of like a simple syrup and infusing it with a little lemon and honey. I'm gonna bring this to a boil and let all of that sugar get dissolved. And then at that point, I will stir in my honey, and then we'll just let it lightly simmer for about 20 minutes. And then we'll just pour it over the top when our baklava comes out. Gonna be so good. And this you could actually make ahead of time. It does not need to be piping hot when you pour it over the baklava. So you could do this step a little bit ahead of time before you even start. Look at this beauty. You're just baking that until it's golden and crisp. All right, so while it's still piping hot, I'm gonna pour that syrup over the top. I like to use a spoon so that I can evenly get it over each little beautiful piece. We're basically just pouring it over, and we're gonna give it time to let it soak between each of those layers. I've said it once, I've said it a million times. Sometimes the best things are the simplest. Most of the time, I would say. We're gonna let this cool. I'm gonna try to wait until tomorrow, but I doubt it. We'll see how long I can wait before I dig into this. But the longer you let it sit, the better. It's so beautiful. Right, like I was really gonna wait till tomorrow. We're gonna go in. Look at all those layers. Remember, the longer this sits, the easier it's gonna be to handle. But y'all, there are so many layers, and it's sticky, it's messy. But I'm just gonna go on and give it a little taste. Wow, when that syrup mixes with the butter, I mean, it's finger licking good, because you're gonna be licking your fingers for the entire time you eat this. A trick when it comes time to serve it, especially if you wanna take this anywhere, is to serve the individual pieces in little cupcake liners, because it is so sticky. You can eat it straight from the liner. That will keep your fingers clean and keep them from getting sticky. Plus, if you're gonna transport this anywhere, you can just put, line these up on a tray, and it's a whole lot easier to serve. This makes a whole lot of sense now, why these are always found, kind of wrapped up individually. Because it is so rich, I would not cut this any bigger than what I did here. You can even go a little smaller with your diamonds if you want, because a little bit goes a long way. So this, again, is just a great dessert to feed a crowd. You can make it on a Tuesday for your party next weekend. Another great thing is that you can serve this room temperature, making this the perfect dessert to bring to your spring wedding shower or a party this summer or a cookout. Definitely a good idea. I hope you'll give this baklava recipe a try, and when you do, don't forget to tag me. Let me know what other specialty desserts you want me to teach you how to make next. Opa. It's not necessarily the dessert to eat when you're on a diet.